Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. The acid rain of Calera 6 fell like a curse from the heavens, carving tiny trenches into rusted metal roofs and boiling away what little life dared surface. It drummed against the ceiling of Damon Vance's shelter with maddening rhythm, sharp, erratic, and constant. But to Damon it was comfort, white noise, a reminder that nothing outside had changed, not really. The storm still raged, the world still bled, and he was still alone. His breath came slow and steady as he hunched over the workbench visor, lowered a dull hum pulsing from the arc, welder clenched in his synthetic fingers. Blue sparks danced across the component he was fusing into his right arm, a power coupling salvaged from a downed Federation drone. Primitive tech by modern standards, but on Calera 6 every scrap was a second chance. Damn interface, he muttered, adjusting the neural nodes embedded along the carbon lattice of his shoulder. His voice was gravel-worn and bitter, like everything else he kept around. With a flick of thought, the limb jerked, hissed, then settled into silence. Outside Calera's scavenger district stirred in chaos. It always did around nightfall. That's when the deals happened, when the scum came out of the ruins to trade, barter, and disappear. This planet had become a border world dumping ground for war criminals' black market tech and displaced ghosts from every shattered empire in the quadrant. Damon had lived among them for years, and none came near his compound anymore. Through the dirty viewport, purple lightning split the clouds, briefly illuminating the twisted skeleton of a derelict Federation cruiser, half buried in the toxic soil beyond his perimeter. The shadows it cast danced like specters. Some nights he imagined he saw movement in the wreckage. He welcomed the thought. At least it meant something was still capable of dying out there. He exhaled and leaned back, flexing the synthetic fingers now faintly pulsing with power. A hiss of hydraulics, the low thrum of synced systems good enough. He reached for a half-burned stim stick, lit it, and watched the arc of orange glow as he took a drag. Then the alert screamed. Red lights flared along the upper corners of the room. Damon dropped the welder instantly, hand darting toward the console as warnings cascaded across the display. Meteorite incoming, unusual density, entry trajectory too clean. He leaned forward, studying the trajectory curve. No way, he muttered. That's not a rock. The scanner chirped again, its readout sharpening. Metallic shell-controlled descent, impactor class 3, estimated crash radius 3 kilometers north near the Whispering Tombs. He stood grabbing the weather-sealed coat hanging near the exit, followed by the atmospheric mask. His pulse rifle, heavily modified, patched with spare parts, and customized for close-quarters annihilation, was already loaded. With one command, the compound sealed behind him as he stepped into the acidic storm. The rain hissed off his gear as his boots squelched into mud that glowed faintly with chemical runoff. He mounted his hover cycle, an ancient model fused with repulsor lift tech ripped from a cargo freighter, and accelerated into the storm like a ghost into oblivion. The wastelands were alive with whispers. Not literal ones, though, on Calera 6, even that wouldn't surprise him. The locals believed the ancient ruins scattered across the planet were haunted. The Whispering Tombs especially. Carvings older than the Federation marked their stone faces etched in languages the archives called extinct. Damon had seen them once, and he hadn't slept right since. The signal was coming from the crater just beyond the first ridge. He parked the cycle and advanced on foot, eyes locked on the soft, pulsing blue-violet glow ahead. And then he saw it. Not a meteor. A Apodon. Sleek, blackened by re-entry heat, but clearly intact. Symbols marked its outer shell, faintly glowing with residual energy. Damon's breath caught. Leonaran script. 15 years. 15 years since he'd seen that language. Since the war, No, not here, not yet. He approached slowly, weapon raised. The pod was cracked along one side. Mist coolant, or something more arcane, leaked into the puddles around it, sizzling as it met the acidic sludge. He wiped the viewport with a gloved hand and froze. Inside was a woman, a humanoid, her skin a deep twilight purple with silver undertones. Her hair like liquid starlight, fanned out in the pod's fluid. Her face was beautiful in a way that seemed sculpted too perfect to be real, high cheekbones, full lips twisted in pain. Around her neck was a collar. Not a simple restraint, it pulsed with a rhythm that echoed some deeper frequency. Damon knew what it was. Containment glyphs, suppression nodes, biointerference coils, a resonance seal. The breath left his lungs. This wasn't just a survivor. This was Petra, the last of the Lenarins. His voice broke as he whispered her name, barely audible over the storm. The pod's systems were failing fast. He scanned it, life support dropping fluid, sterilization compromised, biometric strain increasing. If he didn't act now, she'd die. And whatever was inside her might die with her. He made his choice. The override code was brutal. He bypassed it anyway, using a mix of old Federation root commands and splice logic he'd written years ago. The pod hissed, then released with a loud crack. The suspension fluid spilled out like glowing blood, fizzing as it struck the ground. He caught her as she fell, her body cold and trembling in his arms. She was lighter than she looked and smaller, fragile in a way that contradicted the power humming beneath her skin. Her lips moved. A whisper, a name. He couldn't understand it. Galactic standard number, something older. A prayer. A memory. Her silver eyes opened unfocused. "You're safe," Damon said, though the words felt hollow. No one was safe on Calera, especially not with what she carried in her veins. Especially not with who he used to be. The ride back to the compound was a blur of static wind and red alarms flashing in Damon's visor. He clutched the woman close against his chest, shielding her from the acid rain as best he could with his coat. Every bump the hover cycle hit made her body twitch involuntarily, as if her nerves were firing in alien rhythms. She murmured incomprehensibly, her voice dipping in and out of languages he didn't recognize. Some harmonic, some guttural, all beautiful and deeply wrong against the backdrop of a dying sky. The collar around her neck glowed faintly with each word reacting to her breath, like a machine waiting for activation or a bomb counting down. He tried not to think about either. The compound's biometric gates recognized him instantly and hissed open. Damon carried her inside, bypassing the foyer and entering the makeshift med bay he'd cobbled together from old field units in black market region beds. He laid her gently on the narrow cot, her skin still cool, nearly lifeless. The collar was the problem. Up close, it was worse than he'd thought. It wasn't merely resting on her flesh, it had fused. Tendrils of living metal had wormed into the soft tissue of her throat, like vines through cracked stone. Pulses of light ran along the veins of the collar, synchronized with her heartbeat. The symbols engraved on its surface were old Leonoran. He couldn't read them, but he remembered enough from the war to know what they meant. Containment, suppression, caution, danger. He cursed softly and activated his diagnostic scanner. The display projected a 3D model of the device, quantum lock particle matrices, biofeedback loops, resonance dampeners. Elegant, efficient, cruel. He'd seen resonance dampeners before, but never one this advanced, never one that looked afraid of what it was containing. Petra's chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Her muscles spasmed slightly, her hands curled into claws, knuckles pale. Bruising ringed her wrists, old deep bruises, restraint damage from too long in confinement. Dried blood flecked her temples and sides, though no open wounds remained. She stirred. Her silver eyes opened slowly, unfocused but wide, and then suddenly they locked onto his. "Petra," he said softly, "it's me. Damon, you're safe now." The reaction was immediate. Her pupils dilated and her body tensed, as if someone had jammed a neural spike into her spine. Her lips parted in a rasped whisper, "Not, slave." He froze. She reached up weakly and touched the collar. "Seal," she corrected with effort. "Contain resonance." Damon nodded slowly. "Yeah, I figured." He knelt beside her, lowering the scanner again. "That thing is killing you. It's suppressing something so strong your body can't compensate anymore. You're bleeding energy, Petra, leaking it. If I don't remove it, it's going to tear you apart." Fear flashed in her eyes. She grabbed his wrist with more strength than she should have had. Dangerous, she croaked. I've handled dangerous before, he replied, gesturing to the scar that ran from his jaw to temple and the gleaming synth arm now flexing at his side. Her fingers trembled as they released him. You don't understand. I understand enough, Damon said grimly. You're the last Leonoron, and someone out there went to a hell of a lot of effort to keep that fact buried. Petra's gaze dropped, silver tears pooling in the corners of her eyes. Then you know why the seal must remain. No, Damon said, his voice firm now. What I know is that you're dying, and you're not just another survivor. You're the last thread of something that mattered, something they were afraid of, something I failed to protect. He reached for his toolkit. The choice is yours, he added, activating the laser scalpel. But if you want to live past tomorrow, we start now. Petra said nothing, but slowly, agonizingly, she nodded. He began. The process was delicate microsurgery under quantum interference. The collar had been laced with redundancy systems, each designed to react violently if tampered with. But Damon wasn't guessing. He recognized the tech. Hell, he may have helped design the prototype 15 years ago during the Black Ops phase of the war. It took time. Sweat beaded along his brow. His synth arm jittered, once warning of signal interference. Petra's breathing grew ragged as he deactivated each containment glyph with a whispered apology. Almost there, he muttered. And then, crack! The collar split along its seam with a sound like glass breaking in deep water. For a second, nothing happened. Then the air trembled. A pulse rippled outward from Petra's body, bending light, rattling metal. Every monitor in the compound shorted simultaneously. The lights dimmed, flared, then exploded in showers of sparks. Damon stumbled back as Petra rose from the cot, not standing, not floating, but held aloft by something ancient and immense. Her eyes blazed with light, and her skin shimmered with silver patterns that moved like constellations beneath her flesh. The rain outside stopped. Not slowed, stopped. Droplets hung motionless in the air like frozen time. Damon could only watch. The sky turned blood red. Beyond the compound, the cosmos changed. Stars flickered, nebulae contracted. Gravity buckled in short pulses, and the planet groaned beneath their feet. Resonance, pure, unchecked resonance, was awakening, unbound, untethered, and angry. And somewhere far from Calera 6, across light years and void, the old warning systems lit up. AI sentinels stirred in dead systems. Beacons blinked from ancient ruins. And aboard a fortress known as the Sanctum, High Inquisitor Relari turned from her data feed with a slow, knowing sneer. Set course for Calera 6, she ordered coldly. The resonance has been triggered. The silence that followed was unnatural. No wind, no rain, no hum of old tech or clatter of failing machinery. Just Petra suspended inches above the floor, her hair flowing like white fire around her, her silver eyes burning with light not meant for human comprehension. And Damon Vance standing still in the darkness, heart pounding harder than it had in 15 years of battle. Then gravity collapsed just for a second. Tools floated. Debris lifted. The coolant leak from the far wall curled upward, spiraling like reverse rainfall. And Petra finally gasped, her back arching as her body was pulled gently toward the floor by a reality trying to remember how to behave. The moment her bare feet touched ground, the wave of resonance collapsed in on itself, like breath exhaled after years held in. The lights flickered and returned, though dimmer, uncertain. The air settled. The outside storm resumed, droplets finally falling, shattering against the compound roof like glass. Petra collapsed onto the cot, her body drenched in sweat, her breath ragged. Damon rushed forward, catching her before she slid to the floor. Petra, he whispered, holding her close, feeling the tremor of her frame. Talk to me. I didn't mean to, she whispered, her voice trembling like broken crystal. It wasn't supposed to be that much. You broke time, he muttered. You literally bent the laws of physics in half. She winced. I wasn't trying to. No kidding. Damon scanned her quickly. Vital signs elevated but stable. The bruises on her wrists were fading before his eyes. The small cuts from her restraints had already closed. But it wasn't the physical healing that stunned him. It was what was happening around her. Plants, dead ones, In the corner of his compound near a rusted-out fuel cell, a thorn bush, one of the hardy Calthera varieties he'd failed to keep alive months ago, had bloomed. Vibrant purple flowers now opened toward Petra, and as her gaze drifted toward them, the petals shimmered faintly. "You're kidding me," Damon said aloud, stunned. She turned her head, confusion overtaking exhaustion. "What? That thing's been dead since the last heat storm. Now it's humming. Literally, it's humming." Petra sat up with effort, eyes narrowing on the bush. She extended a trembling hand. The moment her fingers brushed a petal, it glowed. Light danced from the flower's center to its edges like bioluminescent veins. "It's leaking," she said flatly. "What?" "The resonance, I'm leaking." Damon stepped back. "Like hell you are. That looked like a miracle." She shook her head. "It's not supposed to do this. It's supposed to stay inside me until I've stabilized it." He crossed his arms, defined, not stabilized. She looked at him, her expression grim. "Do you want the scientific explanation or the terrifying one?" "I want the one that tells me whether I should be boarding up the windows or digging a bomb shelter." Petra pulled the blanket tighter around herself, suddenly cold. "My people called it resonant overflow. When the internal harmonics can't contain the energy, it bleeds into the environment. It can alter physical laws, rewrite biology, affect the passage of time." She paused. "My sister, she lost control once. An entire outpost relived the same 3 minutes over and over for 2 weeks. 87 people went mad." "You have a sister?" Damon asked, surprise flickering through his voice. "Had." Her voice cracked slightly. "She died when the rest of them did." Damon didn't speak. There was too much weight in that silence. Petra turned to him, her gaze sharper now. "You fought in that war, didn't you?" "I did." "You were one of the special unit." His jaw flexed. "Yes." She looked away. "Then you already know what my people could do." "I know what they said you could do." She met his eyes again. "And what do you believe?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to his tools, picked up a diagnostic wand, and began recalibrating the systems Petra had knocked offline just by breathing too hard. The air still vibrated faintly, like it hadn't yet decided whether it was gas or liquid. "I believe you could change reality," he said eventually. "And the Federation wasn't interested in understanding it, just controlling it, or destroying it." Petra's shoulders relaxed slightly. He added, "I also believe you're more dangerous now than you were then, because they sealed you like a bomb, and now the fuse is gone." She nodded slowly. "That's why the collar was necessary." "But it was killing you." "Yes," she glanced down. "But it was also killing what's inside me. That's worse." Damon's brow furrowed. "Inside you?" She hesitated. "The resonance, it's not just energy, it's memory, intention, identity. We, we don't just use it. We are it. And it evolves with us, learns. If it's suppressed long enough." She trailed off. "You forget who you are," Damon finished for her. She nodded. "Then let's figure it out together," he said. Her silver eyes flickered uncertainty, giving way to something warmer. But before she could respond, Damon's comm console erupted in a piercing whine. The system lit up with red code. "Long-range scan detected. Unauthorized ping. Source deep orbit." His blood went cold. Oh no. He rushed to the terminal, fingers flying across the interface. The feed came in fragmented, encrypted military-level burst comms, not local pirates, not black market scavengers. Something worse. Something clean. Federation. Petra stood now behind him, wrapped in the blanket like a cloak. She stared at the display, eyes narrowing. "They found me." He didn't argue, because she was right. The signal wasn't random, it wasn't curious. It was confirmation. The resonance had been detected, and somewhere far above them in the cold void of orbit, something old and terrible was already aligning itself to erase them both. Damon stared at the encrypted signal cascading across his screen, but his thoughts were no longer on the data. They were with the woman standing behind him, her arms wrapped tight in the blanket, her eyes shimmering not with fear but clarity, as if the signal wasn't news at all, as if she'd always known this would happen. "They weren't just scanning for energy," Petra said quietly. They were scanning for me, for what I am. Damon turned slowly, the faint hum of failing systems still in his ears. That was a military burst transmission. No one uses those frequencies unless they want something buried fast. Petra nodded as if it confirmed something bitterly familiar. I remember pieces now, she whispered. Not all, but enough. The last days of my people, the ships above our cities, the silence before the collapse. Damon clenched his jaw. He remembered too. He had stood on one of those ships, watching from orbit as the cities below turned to silver flame. Petra, he said, voice low, you need to know who I was before all of this. She already knew. He saw it in her face, the growing stillness, the calculation behind the sadness. You were Eidolon, she said simply. He froze. I saw it in the way you bypassed the containment locks, in the way you knew how to disable the collar. And I saw it in the way the resonance reacted to you. It only responds like that when it remembers someone. His synthetic hand twitched at his side, a servo whining softly. I was ordered to neutralize threats to galactic stability. Damon said each word slow, deliberate, as if confessing a sin to a grave. The Leonaran civilization was reclassified as a level A existential risk. My unit was deployed to carry out a containment action. She stared at him, not blinking. Containment, she repeated. He nodded. A nice word for genocide. Damon didn't flinch, yes. The silence between them grew thick, heavy with ghosts. But that wasn't the end of it, he added. We were given access to everything, experimental facilities, black sites, deep data. I found out what the Federation was really trying to do. They weren't just afraid of your kind. They were trying to harvest you, to copy your resonance into artificial vessels. Petra looked away. I was stationed at Terra Station 9, he continued, a facility conducting unauthorized experiments on what remained of your people. Not soldiers, not rebels, children. Her breath caught. One of those children was you. She turned back slowly, her face pale, eyes burning silver. I don't remember. I do, he said, voice almost breaking. You were 6. You never spoke, never cried. But your resonance was off the charts. You bent gravity around you in your sleep. He paused. I couldn't do it. I couldn't let them cut you open. Her lips parted. So you sealed me. I stole a pod, modified it, used an ancient seal found in the ruins. It wasn't meant to suppress you forever, only long enough for you to survive. Long enough for the resonance to mature and for the Federation to forget. You were supposed to be free long before now. Petra's hands trembled at her sides. You put the collar on me. Damon nodded once, no shame, no excuse, only the truth. She staggered back as if the room had tilted under her feet. Do you know what it did to me? I lived in a dreamless void for years. Waking up was like breaking through stone. I thought I was saving you, Damon whispered. I thought I'd come find you again, help you relearn the world. But the pod drifted too far. By the time I tracked its trail, it had already crashed here. 15 years too late. Petra sank into the cot, her face buried in her hands. I didn't remember anything she said. Not even my name, not until the seal broke. Damon didn't move. You should hate me, he said. I deserve it. But Petra didn't answer with rage. Instead, she said quietly, I don't know how to feel. I see you as the man who saved me, and I remember glimpses of you carrying me through the fire, but I also feel this great weight, this echo of everyone I lost. She looked up, eyes shimmering with barely restrained emotion. I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Damon said. I'm asking for a chance to atone. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Petra whispered, why? He blinked. Why what? Why save me? Why risk everything? You could have followed orders. You were their best. Why throw that away for a child who didn't even speak? His answer came without hesitation. Because when I looked at you, he said, I saw something worth saving in a galaxy that had stopped showing me anything worth fighting for. She inhaled sharply. Damon stepped forward slowly, carefully. I've killed more people than I can count. I've erased cities. I've done things no one should walk away from. But saving you, that was the only thing that made me feel human again. She stared at him. Then without a word she stood and reached for him. Her fingers, cold and trembling, touched his cheek just barely. The spark between them was instantaneous. Not metaphorical, real. A pulse of resonance leapt between their skin, silver and gold arcs dancing along his synthetic frame and her bare fingertips. Time seemed to slow again, not in chaos, but in intimacy. Damon didn't move, and Petra leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "I don't know if I trust you," she whispered, "but I think the resonance does." Then she kissed him. Not soft, not sweet. Raw, desperate, real. It wasn't about love, not yet. It was about connection. About shattered pieces finding a fit even if they didn't know what image they once formed. About a killer and a survivor, both shaped by war, colliding in the ruins of a galaxy that had betrayed them both. And as they embraced, the rain outside fell harder than ever, like the planet itself was weeping. But inside, the storm finally paused. Petra lay motionless beneath the emergency shield canopy, breathing slow and even. The storm had passed, at least above the compound, but not within her. Damon stood over her, silent, watching the diagnostic feeds scroll across the cracked monitor. The data made no sense. Elevated cellular activity, accelerated regeneration, stable heart rate, stable brain waves, but something was evolving beneath the surface of the readouts. Something unprecedented. "You're changing," he whispered. Petra stirred, her eyes half-lidded. "Not changing, becoming." Damon leaned closer. "Becoming what?" She didn't answer. Her hands were folded across her stomach, almost protectively. And suddenly Damon understood. "Petra," she looked at him now, fully awake, silver irises glowing faintly even in low light. "It began before the collar was removed," she said softly. "Even under suppression, the resonance knew." "You're—" She nodded once. "Pregnant." The word hit like a thunderclap in a vacuum. He stepped back as the implications collided all at once. Not just a child, but their child. A being born of human blood in Leonaran resonance. An impossibility, a miracle, a threat. He ran a shaking hand through his hair. "How is that even—" "I don't know," Petra said. "Our physiology shouldn't align. Not after what the resonance became, but it didn't just accept you, it chose you." She paused. "Maybe that's why it responded to you when I woke up. Why the sky bent, why the storm froze." Damon paced the edge of the room, boots scraping metal. "This is bad." Her gaze sharpened. "Bad. You're carrying a hybrid child with unpredictable abilities. The Federation already knows you're alive. If they find out what's growing inside you, they'll level this planet to subatomic dust just to erase the data." She closed her eyes. "Then we run. Run where there's nowhere left to hide." "There's always somewhere," she whispered. "The resonance remembers." Damon froze mid-step. "Wait, what?" She sat up, face strained. "The resonance, it's not just power, Damon. It's memory. Genetic memory. Cosmic memory. It remembers every world the Leonarans touched. Every place we left behind. There are hidden systems, shielded moons, dimensional fractures." She reached out and touched his hand. "We don't run through space. We run through time. Through memory." He stared at her. "You're serious?" Her eyes glowed brighter. "Yes." Before he could respond, a blast rocked the compound. The eastern wall lit up red as kinetic force sheared through reinforced alloy. Damon threw himself over Petra as the wave of pressure slammed them into the floor. Explosions followed, targeted, precise. Not orbital bombardment. Breaching charges. "They're here," he hissed, dragging her toward the hidden corridor behind the server stack. Another blast collapsed the ceiling just as the doors sealed behind them. She coughed, eyes wide. "Too fast. They moved too fast." "They've been tracking you since the seal broke," Damon growled. "This isn't a recovery op. It's an extermination." They moved through the tunnel, damp and dark, lit only by emergency strips. Petra limped slightly, but the resonance inside her shimmered with each step, each spark of fear, of defiance. "Tell me about the resonance memory," Damon said, breath tight. "Tell me how we use it." She focused. "There's a node buried in the ardent chasm, a rift. My people used it during the War of Folding. If I can reach it, if I can interface directly with it, Maybe I can slip us between fractures. Maybe he snapped. It's better than certain death, she shot back. Another tremor shook the tunnel. Metal groaned. Or not, she added. They burst out into the surface bunker, an old freighter garage long abandoned by miners. Damon slammed the hatch closed and activated the blast seals. Dust rose in thick sheets as he dragged an ancient scout ship into the center of the hangar and began override procedures. Petra sat on the floor, hand on her abdomen, whispering in an alien tongue. The lights around her flickered in time with her voice. "What are you doing?" he asked without turning. "Calming it," she said. "It's scared. The child. It's already aware, Damon. It feels everything. Your fear, my pain, the death in the air." He paused. "You're telling me our unborn kid is telepathic and empathic and attuned to resonance on a level my people never reached." He looked at her. "So, you're telling me our child might be a god?" Petra didn't respond. She didn't have to. Damon swore under his breath and forced the engines to power. The scout ship screamed in protest, but the reactor core caught flame and held. Lights surged through the vessel. Petra climbed in beside him, her face pale, her breath shallow. "Can you make it to the rift?" he asked. "I can try." Outside, metal shrieked as an orbital drop pod crashed through the facility roof. Elite soldiers in midnight armor fanned out standard Federation Eidolon Black Ops. Damon recognized the pattern. He used to wear that pattern. "Hang on," he growled. The ship lifted with a roar and screamed out of the compound just as a missile detonated behind them, vaporizing everything that remained. Petra's hands glowed. She leaned forward, whispering to the controls, not the interface, but to the resonance within the ship's old systems. And for a moment, Damon felt something bend around them, like the wind had forgotten what direction meant. The stars twisted, time faltered, and they slipped. There was no sky, no stars, no horizon, only the in-between. The scout ship drifted through a void not made of space but memory. Streams of light twisted around the hull fragments of times long dead. A Leonaran temple beneath twin moons, a battlefield of glass and ash, a laughing child running barefoot on metal floors. Damon gripped the controls tighter, though they responded less like machines and more like thoughts. He wasn't flying the ship anymore. The ship was following Petra. She stood at the front of the cabin, now hands glowing, whispering to the very fabric of this fractured place. "The Ardent Chasm," she said softly. "It's not a location. It's a resonance fold, a place where memory, time, and matter intersect." "And we're flying through it?" Damon asked, blinking as a silhouette of his younger self flickered past the viewport. Gun-raised eyes empty. "No," Petra corrected. "We're inside it." He swallowed hard. "What happens if we get lost in here?" "We don't," she said simply. Comforting. They passed through another fragment, this one more vivid. A Leonaran city made of crystal and song. A giant spire pulsated in rhythm with the heartbeat of those walking its platforms. Music hummed in the air, built into the walls, into the bones. Damon felt it as they crossed joy, pride, harmony. Then the image shattered, and the silence after it felt like mourning. Petra stumbled. He caught her before she fell. "The child?" he asked. "No," she said, breath ragged. "Something's calling, something old." She reached forward and pressed her hand against the console, not to control it, but to guide it like one would soothe a wounded animal. The void opened before them, revealing what looked like a massive wound in space, a rift of violet flame encircled by runes too ancient for language. Shapes moved around it, some angelic, some monstrous, none fully real. Damon felt a pressure behind his eyes. "This isn't just memory," he said. "This is where your people died." She nodded, "and where part of them still lives." The ship entered the rift. The moment they did, the universe changed. They stood no longer in a cockpit, but on a stone bridge suspended in a sea of starlight. The ship had become thought, and thought had become matter. Damon looked down. He wore old armor, the same kind from the war. His synthetic hand was gone, his body restored to how it had once been, scarred, muscular breathing. Petra stood beside him now, clad in ceremonial Leonaran garb. Her hair shimmered like moonlight, her skin faintly glowing, her eyes fully silver. "You've changed," he whispered. She didn't answer. From the depths, something rose. It was massive, larger than a city, a being made of memory and code of light and shadow, a fusion of Leonarian essence and something else older, colder. The echo she breathed, a fragment of the resonant core. The echo spoke without sound. Why have you come? Petra stepped forward. To save the child. The echo pulsed. You bring instability. You are the breach. I bring rebirth, she countered. The resonance survived because it adapted, and now it evolves. The echo turned to Damon. And you, the executioner, the traitor, the flawed vessel. I'm just a man, he said, but I'd burn galaxies to protect her. The echo hesitated. Then, one must pass the trial, you or the child. Petra's breath caught. The child's not born yet. Then you will be tested in its place. The bridge shattered beneath them. Damon fell through flame, through memory. Through his worst day, he stood again on the ground of Elkar Prime. The day he led the orbital strike on the Leonarian capital. His hands trembled. The sky above boiled with fire. Below, the city screamed, and in front of him stood Petra as a child. Silent, unmoving, her eyes pleading. He remembered this. He remembered lifting his weapon, hesitating. But now he saw what came after, what the memory had hidden. He didn't just walk away. He wept. He carried her through ash and bone, hid her in a stasis pod, not out of duty but love. The first true thing he'd felt in years. Tears filled his eyes, and the world cracked. He returned to the bridge, knees shaking, breath ragged. Petra was still there. The echo pulsed. He is true. It turned to Petra. And you, heart of the lost, what will you give to forge what must be? She stepped forward, hand on her belly. Everything, she whispered, if it means our child lives. The echo paused, then released a single pulse of golden resonance. It struck them both. Damon screamed as his body burned and reformed, rewritten on a molecular level. Petra shuddered, holding her stomach as the child's light flared inside her. Then all was still. The bridge returned, and so did the ship. They sat in the cockpit again, hands clasped, breath slow. What did it do to us? Damon whispered. Petra's voice shook. It blessed us, she said, and marked us. The child now glowed faintly beneath her skin. No longer just a child, a nexus. A bridge between species, between eras, between dimensions. The spark between worlds. The moment they exited the ardent chasm, the universe noticed. It wasn't dramatic. No alarms or sirens, no sudden rip in the sky. But across 1,000 star systems, sensitive instruments shivered. Deep space observatories reported phantom pulses. Psychic races awoke screaming. Artificial minds froze mid-cycle. And within the halls of power, the fear began. Not of an army, but of a child. Back aboard the battered scout ship, Damon stared out at the starlit abyss ahead. They were back in normal space, if anything could be called normal, after what they had just survived. Petra slept behind him, her hand still protectively over her belly. But something had changed. The child's energy was no longer hidden. It pulsed gently in every nearby molecule. The ship hummed to its rhythm. Even Damon's breathing unconsciously matched the beat. She's broadcasting, he murmured. A soft voice responded behind him. Not broadcasting, existing. Petra stood now, eyes clearer than ever. She doesn't send. The universe listens. Damon turned. We need to mask her, shield her again. Petra shook her head. We can't. Not anymore. The resonance doesn't want to be hidden. It wants to grow, to transform. He clenched his jaw. Then every faction out there will come for us. Federation, syndicates, cults, even the damn Varkari seers. They'll see her as a weapon, a prophecy, or a threat. Petra's eyes darkened, then let them come. But even as she said it, Damon knew they weren't ready. Not yet, and the galaxy never gave second chances. On the moonworld of Orvin-Ira, a cloaked figure kneeled in the presence of the obsidian circle. She lives, he whispered, trembling. The robed leader stirred, and the child one asked. The figure nodded, confirmed. A second voice hissed, then the seal failed. The chasm was accessed, the messenger confirmed. They've awakened it. The room fell into dead silence. Then a single word. Mobilize. Far in the core within the throne ship, Celestial Val, the last matron of the Cyrixian priesthood, read the omens from the Song Stone. Starborn child, conceived in genocide, birthed in betrayal, crowned in resonance. She wept, then turned to her acolytes. Find her, at all costs. And aboard the Thranos Protocol flagship of the Federation's Secret War Council, High Admiral Varric stared at the data with cold fury. A hybrid of Leonoran and human origin, he snarled. Yes, sir, the analyst replied. Estimated birth within 3 cycles. Unprecedented resonance spikes. Potential category Omega emergence. Varric clenched his fist. I want black site teams en route. No survivors, no traces. That child must not exist. Back aboard the scout ship, Petra sat in meditation while Damon modified the vessel. Every part was now patched with resonance-infused alloys, scavenged tech, and obsolete Eidolon components. They had no reinforcements, no friends, just each other. And time was running out. We can't just run, Damon finally said. I'm not planning to, Petra replied. I'm planning to strike first. He blinked. Against who? The entire galactic hierarchy. Her voice was steady. Yes. Damon stood slowly. Then we'll need allies. Petra smiled. Then let's start with the forgotten. They began moving planet to planet, quiet systems left behind after the last collapse. Worlds abandoned to decay, but not to silence. On Shatterlight Delta, they rallied a colony of exiled AI, teaching them to feel again through resonance. On Varus 9, they rescued hybrid children hidden from Federation labs. On the broken ruins of Carthus 4, they found weapons buried beneath the crust, old Leonaran war engines, waiting for a reason to rise. The reason now had a heartbeat, the child, the spark between worlds. Her energy flowed outward as she grew, and with it the galaxy shifted. New species reported dreams of the same face. Starships malfunctioned, then healed themselves. Old rivalries fell into silence. Something ancient was waking. Petra sat beneath a canopy of stars, her hand resting on her growing belly. She was further along than she should have been, 3 months into what should have taken 3 years by Leonaran gestation. But this child didn't follow biology. She followed destiny. Damon sat beside her, rifle across his lap. Do you think she'll be safe? He asked. Petra stared ahead. She won't be, but she'll be ready. He chuckled bitterly. Great, born with a target on her back. Born with a crown, Petra corrected, and wings. He looked at her. You really believe she's the bridge? Petra nodded. Not just between species, between dimensions, between eras. She turned to him. We're the last of what was. She's the first of what's coming. And from the stars above them, the hunt had already begun. The coordinates were a death wish. A barren moon on the edge of the singularity reach, where time warped and resonance screamed in echoes. No safe landing zone, no outpost, just a craterscape of obsidian and lightning-charged air. And that was exactly why Damon chose it. They arrived hours before the storm front, enough time to bury signal jammers, repurpose the old mining rigs into plasma turrets, and prepare escape contingencies that deep down Damon knew they'd never use. Because this wasn't about escape anymore. It was about birth. Petra lay in the reinforced medbay, surrounded by shielding domes and ancient Leonaran stasis tech reawakened by her touch. Her skin glowed silver, her breathing sharp and rhythmic. Every contraction sent ripples of energy through the floor, through Damon's bones, through space itself. She's coming! Petra gasped. I know, Damon whispered, brushing sweat from her forehead. We're ready. Outside, the stars began to move. No, not stars. Warships. Federation destroyers decloaked in low-orbit gunmetal and fire. The Thranos Protocol led the charge, flanked by Arc-class suppression vessels and the black-armored Eidolon shock fleet. Moments later came the cult Syrixian dreadnoughts, shaped like open mouths, their void engines chanting hymns. Then the rogue factions, pirates, bounty hunters, hybrids, even a Vakari mirror ship pulsing with dark psychic energy. Damon watched from the surface station's shielded bunker. Hundreds of signals, all converging. Guess the baby shower's a big deal, he muttered. The AI chimed softly. Multiple fleets demanding surrender. Tell them to wait in line, he snapped, activating full defense protocols. Turrets rose, orbitals aligned, and the sky turned red. The assault began with warnings. Then came the fire. Federation rail shots rained down, tearing through the first layer of shielding. Eidolon drop pods burned through the atmosphere like angry meteors. Damon activated trap lines, sent the mining rigs into suicidal charge mode. The moon became a war zone, but the child would not wait. Inside the dome, Petra screamed not from pain, but from magnitude. Her body was a conduit now. The resonance she carried had become unstable, pulsing like a star trying to be born. She's opening a gate, Petra gasped. Damon turned. What kind of gate? Petra gritted her teeth. Two everywhere. Energy exploded from her chest, flaring across the med bay. Screens shattered. The air bent. Reality cracked. Outside, the ships paused. The Thranos protocol tried to lock on, but its weapon system froze, then reversed. One of its own railguns exploded from within, shattering its hull. The Syrixian fleet began to chant, not in aggression but reverence. The child speaks, the matron wept. The new axis sings through her. Still others were not moved. The Varkari mirror ship unleashed its psychic lash, a scream across dimensions meant to obliterate thought. Inside the bunker, Petra arched her back, eyes glowing white. And the scream reflected. The Varkari ship collapsed inward, crushed by its own echo. Damon stood at the gates, firing shot after shot at approaching Eidolons. They came with full armor, old grudges, and no hesitation. But neither did he. Each breath, each shot, each explosion was a prayer, not to gods, but to her. His daughter, their daughter. Inside, the energy reached its peak. The dome split. Petra floated now, no longer grounded but radiant. The resonance coalesced into symbols around her. Runes no one alive could read, but everyone felt. Time began to slow. Across the battlefield, combatants paused not by choice, but by force. The baby was coming, and all of reality knew it. Petra cried out one last time, and the moon shook. Then, silence. Then, a single sound. A cry. Soft, innocent, divine. Damon turned in time to see Petra lowering slowly, a small, glowing child in her arms. Silver eyes, human skin, and a halo of energy that distorted light. She did not scream again. She only looked up and smiled. The resonance collapsed inward, folding time around her like a womb of starlight. And then the fleets retreated, one by one without signal or order. Even the Thranos protocol turned and vanished into the black, its admiral weeping. They all knew it was no longer their galaxy. It was hers. Later, when the moon was quiet and Petra slept, Damon cradled his daughter beneath the twin moons. "You're going to change everything," he whispered. The child gurgled. A star blinked into existence above them, one that hadn't been there before. A gift, a warning. He didn't care. He kissed the child's forehead. And the universe shifted just a little more.